Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm glad you're here. Today I have a magic comparison review for you guys, and I have been thinking about doing this kind of review for a while now, where I take two products that are extremely similar or almost the same thing and compare them head to head, give you guys an objective view of both of those, and then give you my recommendations of why I would recommend one product over the other. And this happens often where a magic effect is released and maybe it's extremely similar or almost the exact same thing of another effect that maybe has been out for years even. So today I'm going to be comparing Joel Dickinson's effect called Peaked with Shaun Dunn's Zoltar. Now these effects, even though they're separated by a couple of years, it is interesting to note that the effect that Joel Dickinson put out this year, Peaked, is actually a minor variation of another effect that he published in a book he put out in 2018, and we're going to get back to that shortly. So these routines are actually variations of an effect that was published in a book called Tangled Web by Eric Mead, and that effect was called An Auspicious Occasion. That effect was a streamlined version of Max Maven's Desire. Now, what Eric Mead did back in 2006 when he published his book was he basically got rid of the pseudo-psychometry from Desire, and instead of having the person think of a place they would like to go to, he has them think of somebody that means something to them. So basically, a couple of business cards are handed out, a person's asked to write down the name of someone that is close to them, and then the other business cards are filled out with random names. It's mixed up. The mentalist isolates one card, which is the card that has the person's name that they're thinking of, and then by clairvoyance or telepathy they tell them what that is. That was the basic effect, and Eric Mead's version was very, very simple, very straightforward. And so basically the Shaun Dunn version, which is called Zoltar, actually takes it up one level more, I would say, from that, because it makes it a little bit more elusive, a little bit more misdirection. And then, of course, Joel Dickinson has also added something himself to his. So if we start with Zoltar by Shaun Dunn, this was actually presented by Louis Laval, and you can still pick this up from Penguin Magic for $15. You're going to get a download where you're going to watch Louis Laval present the effect to random people, which is nice to watch actual live performances, where he approaches a group of people. He gives one person 4 business cards and he has them write down the name of someone who's important to them. And then on the other 3, they write down some random names. They mix them up, and then the mentalist, by feel alone, just hovering their hand over it, they select 2 cards that they say, well, it's definitely not this one. It's definitely not that one. I'm not sure about these 2. Which one do you think it could be? They think it's one of them. You say, no, I think it's the other one. You can show the spectator that the one that they thought it was a totally different name. And then at that point, you can tell the spectator to mix up all the cards, and you just tell them, just concentrate on the name, and you read their mind, or by telepathy or clairvoyance, you tell them the name that they're concentrating on. That is Zoltar in a nutshell. It's a very fast effect. There's no sleight of hand. It is completely impromptu, and it can be done completely off the cuff. I've used it often at work, because where I work, there's business cards laying around everywhere. You want to do something really quick, you just grab a couple business cards. The actual preparation you need to perform it, you can do it in like a half a second right under the nose of the spectator. And so this is a kind of routine that it actually plays really quickly, because there's not a lot of procedure involved, and it really fools people badly. And you could perform this really completely surrounded, as you would see if you do get the download. That is Zoltar by Shaun Dunn, and it looks very, very similar to the original effect by Eric Mead. There is an element of assumption involved, which is very powerful. You really have to understand that assumption principle, that the spectator is going to just assume that the other card is the card. That assumption principle is so powerful that you really don't underestimate that. It really is that strong. So Zoltar was put out in 2018, and then the same year, Joel Dickinson published his book, which was called Tricking the Brain. And in there, he put a living and dead test which was called, what was that? It's called I See Dead People. And in there, basically, he actually credited Eric Mead and Shaun Dunn, which was interesting. It was basically the exact same effect, but presented as a living and dead test. And the difference was that he did explain in the book that you had to kind of do a move really quickly because you have to show a card more than once. And so there was kind of a problem with his effect. Because of the move, the sleight that he uses, he had to show a card more than once, and so he kind of made it seem like you had to do it really quickly. And then at the end of the chapter, he actually said, well, one idea would be instead of writing names on the other cards, you just write a swiggle mark. That was his solution at the time. Now, that was back in 2018. Now he released this new effect called Peaked, which is basically a small variation of his effect, I See Dead People, because it uses the exact same mechanics. So for $13, you could pick up this effect by Joel Dickinson called Peaked. And basically, you're going to learn an effect that looks and feels exactly like the Eric Mead effect. The only difference is that there's a little bit of overproving, and then there's a second phase to get rid of a discrepancy, which I really didn't like. So here's what the effect looks like. You present a couple of, he uses blank face playing cards, but you can also use blank cards as long as they're glossy. Otherwise, it would be very hard to do the move you have to do. So he presents these cards. He has a spectator think of somebody that's important to them. And in the actual download, it's Michael Murray who presents the effect to Joel Dickinson. And so he writes down a name of someone who's important to them. He mixes up the cards, and then the mentalist is able to isolate one card, and he can show that the other three are blank. Okay, so there's the overproving part. Then in continuation, he mixes up the cards again, and now he has the spectator do it. He has a spectator isolate one card, and then he can read their mind, tell them what it is, and they can look at the card and see that it is the card that has the name on it. So that's basically what it is in a nutshell. And as you can see, it looks and it feels exactly the same as Zoltar and Eric Mead's effect, because practically it is in that way, because it is, again, like a living and dead test, and it has that aspect of clairvoyance or telepathy built in. That's where the similarities are. But after that, I would say that there's a lot of other things you have to take into consideration. And my own recommendation from road testing both of these out is I would recommend that you just pick up Zoltar and just forget about this effect Peaked altogether. And I'm going to give you guys my exact reasonings of why I think Zoltar is much, much better. So for starting out, I really didn't like that the performance on Peaked was just Michael Murray performing for Joel Dickinson. Like, that's like whoop-de-doo, you know? Like, there's no live performances with real spectators. So you're going to have to go out and perform it yourself if you want to see how it works or doesn't work. That's why I like the Louis Laval version better, the one that Shaun Dunn came up with, Zoltar, because Louis Laval actually goes out and performs for real groups of people, and you could see him just about surrounded doing this. And because the misdirection is so strong, they never ever catch what's going on. Another reason why I would say you would want to pick up Zoltar is because there's no sleight of hand involved at all. Comparison with this, there's a move you have to do, which looks really, I mean, it looks like a move, kind of, you know, it doesn't look natural per se, the way that you're handling the cards. So even though you're proving that you're holding just blank cards, it doesn't look normal the way that you show it to them, you know? And like I said before, you need to have special cards to perform this. You need to either have blank face playing cards, or you need to have blank card stock that's glossy. Because if you're trying to use just regular business cards to do this move, it's going to be very difficult. And I suspect many people would be just turned off by that alone and just not want to deal with having to do that move with, you know, a regular business card. It will be difficult to do. So that might just kill it for you right there. You might just say, oh, this is annoying. Another thing that I didn't like was I don't like the idea that he doesn't write any names on the other cards. So in Peaked, the person writes the name of someone they're concentrating on one card, and then the other three cards are blank. Now, Joel Dickinson at the end of the download does give a tip. He gives an idea of taking the other three and writing an X on them. And the main reason when you think about it is because you're gonna have to show one of those cards twice, and because of that, they have to all look very similar. And that was the original problem he had in his book, in his routine, I See Dead People, which he tried to improve here. So unfortunately, it's not much of an improvement, and I think that the over-proving that the cards you haven't selected are blank, it really doesn't add much to the effect overall. And if anything, it leaves you in this bad position that now you have a card there that supposedly is the one that has something written on it, and then you have to go into this second phase just to clean up the discrepancy, which is horrible when you think about it. Whereas in Zoltar, you never really show them the faces of any of these cards except for the one card that the person thinks might be their card when you show it to them that it's not. And so it really doesn't matter though. That's the thing, you don't realize this, but people don't care about that. They're just gonna assume that the one card you've isolated is the card. And then another point that I'm gonna make is that in Zoltar, you're writing names on all of the cards. So in the spectator's mind, even if you were to see a card by some miracle, how is it that you're gonna even see the right name? Whereas in Peaked, there's only one name written on one card. So if you happen to peek the card with the name on it, then you'll know the name. You see what I'm trying to get at? So I think Zoltar, the structure of it is a lot stronger because there's names on all the cards, not just one of the cards. I think that really adds to the routine altogether. And I think that the discrepancy at the end, which is also present in Zoltar, but who cares? Nobody really notices it. And all the times that I performed it, nobody even questions it. When you just give them the cards and say, here, mix them up, I'm just gonna, you know what, I'm just concentrate on the name. And then you just blow right by it. Nobody even thinks about it. The discrepancy is like gone. Whereas in the Joel Dickinson version, Peaked, he goes out of his way to create another phase, more procedure of the spectator isolating a card by the method that we all know about how we get spectators to isolate a card, and it just waters down the effect. Think about this, that first, the Mentalist isolated the one card that has something written on it just by hovering their hand over it. It's like amazing. But then you have them shuffle the cards and you have them do the exact same thing. You have them isolate one card, which is the same. So having them do the same thing you just did, it just waters down the effect completely. It makes it seem like anybody could do it. So I don't see how that makes the effect any stronger. If not, I think it makes it a lot weaker. So I think that for all of these reasons, Zoltar is a much better version of this effect, which is really a variation of Eric Mead's Auspicious Occasion effect. And I would recommend you just really totally stay away from the Joel Dickinson version, which is Peaked, because I don't think you're gonna like that at all. Now, for those people that are interested, there is methods in the mentalism literature for how to do this, where you will not have that discrepancy at the end. I'm not going to mention that here out in the open, because the reality is I would rob you of the pleasure of actually reading through the mentalism literature and learning these secrets on your own, because these are like deep secrets that take years of studying mentalism to really learn them and to really appreciate them. I could just tell you, but then you'll never appreciate it, And that's the thing I think that you need, is you really need to study the material and to learn and to go out there and practice and perform for people, so you can really feel, you can get the reactions, and you can see really how to improve your own presentations and what you need. Because we always think as magicians that we need to prove something, and I think that that's why this effect, Peaked by Joel Dickinson, really fails. I don't think that it's any improvement on this plot. If anything, I think that it's a lot of procedure. I think that the overproving doesn't add anything to it, and I think it just retracts from it, and I think that it just makes everything look very suspicious. So as I mentioned before, I would recommend either you pick up Zoltar, which I think you're going to really like a lot. You're going to be performing it 5 minutes after you watch the instructional video, or you can also check out Eric Mead's book, Tangled Web. But what I really liked about Zoltar was that assumption principle that's at play. It gives you so much misdirection that you have all the time in the world to do what you need to do to be able to get the information you need to get. So anyway, that's what I wanted to tell you guys today. As usual, if you have any questions or comments about this review, I welcome them below. Leave me any comments that you like about this. For those people that have participated in my giveaway for the Unbiased Peak, thank you. And we have another week to go before I will let you guys know who the lucky winners are. Anyway, that's all for now. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning into my magic reviews, and I will see you on the next one.